Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon.
Everybody, and welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event is going to start right now, so please put on your headphones. They already should be on. You should be hearing my voice crystal clear. If at any point the sound does not work, just raise your hand, and we will happily help you out. We're very excited here to have an event on building a workforce to support a climate-ready nation, and it's our pleasure to introduce the LinkedIn's Head of Climate Policy Partnerships, Ephraim Beiser.
Thanks, Tom. All right, yeah. All right, jobs. Good. Everyone likes jobs, skills. I'm really excited about this event. We have a great panel, and I think maybe I'll just start by saying a few scene-setting remarks, and then let the panelists kind of introduce themselves. Yesterday was the first ever Human Development Day at COP. It was the first day at a COP ever focused on how to build a workforce that can actually deliver on all of the climate commitments we make. When I think about the UAE consensus that was agreed upon at COP28 to triple renewable energy production and double energy efficiency by 2030, all of those goals requires a workforce that can get it done. And what we actually see at LinkedIn is that we might be falling behind. So we put out a Green Skills Report every year. We put out our Green Skills Report 2 weeks ago now, and that report had a few key findings. One, employer demand for green skills is growing twice as fast as supply. And that's not an equation that's going to play out very well when we think about that employer demand is probably a lagging indicator of planetary need. So what that means is we have to drastically accelerate how we build green skills across the workforce. Two, that this is not just about saving the planet, this is also about economic opportunity. We can see that workers with green skills globally have a hiring rate that's 55% higher than the workforce overall. And in the US, it's nearly 80% higher. So that really speaks to the increasing demand for workers with green skills. Much of that induced by some of the legislation that's been passed over the last few years. And we know that in part because we can look at the fastest growing green skills, and they overwhelmingly around the world fall into 4 categories. And these won't be all that surprising to anybody, I don't think. 1 is renewable energy generation. 2 is building decarbonization. 3 is sustainable procurement, and you can think about how many companies and even government agencies where their emissions lie are in their supply chain. And then 4 is ecosystem management. And we actually learn a lot as we do this research. When I first saw that ecosystem management was one of those skill categories, I thought it was all about resilience and adaptation. And it turns out that when we want to build renewable energy power plants, basically, they need a lot more land than their fossil fuel counterparts. And so it turns out that instead of focusing on air pollution, we now have to think about things like stormwater management. And we start to see that in the data, and we can see how important these skills are. These are what it's going to take to actually power a transition. And lastly, I'll just say that we actually see that green skills are growing really quickly in jobs that we don't think of as obviously green. So we hear a lot today about jobs that are, installing solar panels. But there are lots of jobs like that, sustainable, like in procurement and supply chain, those jobs have existed for generations. Their core purpose isn't to green the planet. But today, green skills are really important to those because we know we can achieve our climate targets without those jobs doing those jobs being done slightly differently. And I can imagine many of us here didn't start our careers in climate. I started my career mostly in workforce and economic development. And it turns out that many people like me who focus mostly on jobs and skills have found our way into climate because this is the economic opportunity of today and tomorrow. So that's maybe some scene-setting remarks just to kind of set the lay of the land for where we're going to be. And I'd love to now have our panelists go down and just kind of say their name, what affiliations they're bringing, and maybe just one thing that brings them to COP this year. Dr. Spinrad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Rick Spinrad. I am the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and the Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the U.S. And I'm delighted to talk about the issue of jobs and employment in the climate sector. And I am here because our basic capabilities at NOAA are tied to just about everything you see with a major focus on adaptation and resilience. So we've got a team of about 12 NOAA subject matter experts here at COP, as we do at every COP, to talk about building new products and services to meet the needs for climate adaptation and resilience.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Corringham. I am a research economist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, University of California, San Diego, and I'm here with a number of research groups, one of which does workforce development and curriculum development, and being at COP is a great opportunity for us to connect with the international community. Normally we're very locally focused, but this is a great opportunity for us to see what other people are doing around the world.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adjoa Atakra. I'm the Director of Engagement and Delivery at Education Development Center. Very excited to be at COP this year to help raise awareness about the importance of education and skilling for the green transition. So it's not just about jobs, it's not just about money, or technology. It's about people, and our focus really is in highlighting the fact that people must be at the center of this green transition. Thank you.
Hello, glad to be with you. I'm Carla Frisch from the U.S. Department of Energy. I'm the head of policy there and also lead the Office of Energy Jobs at the U.S. Department of Energy. And we have had the past 4 years of really historic investment in energy infrastructure across the U.S. We've seen 400,000 new clean energy jobs in the U.S., and I'm here to share some of what we've been doing.
Amazing. So we have an awesome panel to talk about this topic. I'm really excited about it. And one of the things that we see in our data, and I think you've already heard from the panelists, is climate change is changing the world of work. This is just what the world of work is doing. And the world of work must continue to change to actually deliver on climate action, on the things we need to do. So I've got a few questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up for some more discussion, and hopefully maybe even get a little bit of Q&A in there. So Carla, we'll start with you. What policies or funding initiatives has the government implemented, I think DOE in particular, and I know you all are doing some really great work, to support the training and education of workers in climate-related fields? And I think also the research, maybe you can highlight some of the research on the Energy Employment Report, which I think really speaks to some of the growth numbers that you were talking about.
Right. This is actually hard to answer because there is so much that has been going on in the U.S. the past couple years in this space. So overall, of course, we've had the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and those are putting a historic infusion of capital into clean energy infrastructure. So that, of course, makes its way down into jobs, and we have seen a big increase in projects and jobs. Two specific examples I'll give is we are providing funding from the federal government directly to training programs for energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is actually one of the biggest energy employers in the U.S., right? This takes hands-on skilled labor, thinking about working with heating, ventilation, air conditioning, working with windows, working with insulation, and there's a lot of transferable job skills there. So we provide direct funding for energy efficiency, training for energy auditors, also for, as you mentioned, solar installation, for electric vehicle, building electric vehicles, installing the charging. So we provide grants to get that kind of training going. And we talk about training, but not only training, right? It's building a set of skills so that you can have a career pathway, not just a job, but a full career, and hopefully a good paying job. Another type of policy change, and I think this is actually quite historic for the U.S., is use of the tax code to actually incent quality jobs. So there's several energy tax credits, and the way they're set up, let's say you build a project that produces zero emissions electricity. If you just build the project, you can get a 5% tax credit. But if you are paying a good wage, using apprenticeship pathways, and using the best practices that we talk about from training and quality jobs, you can actually get a 5 times multiplier and get a 30% tax credit instead of a 5 or 6% tax credit. So that is a big enough incentive that we have actually seen just in a couple years some changes in the behavior of companies doing these types of projects. And you mentioned the U.S. Energy Employment Report. So this is a survey we do. For past years, we go to every private sector energy company in the U.S. and say, who are you employing? How hard is it to hire? Who are you looking for? And we used to, in past years, get 20,000, 30,000 answers. This year, 42,000 U.S. companies came to us to answer the survey and said we have a historically high level of energy jobs, of clean energy jobs, growth in clean energy jobs, double U.S. regular job growth, which was already really good in the past couple of years. So big opportunity areas.
And I think so much of what you're saying is that there's just so much demand for this talent from employers. When I mentioned that stat that the LinkedIn hiring rate is so much higher for workers with green skills, so much of it's driven by this demand, in particular that companies in this space are hiring workers who already work in it. Now, that's probably okay for meeting like an individual employer's need, but at some point, some employer has to look outside the energy space. And one of the things that I think the report starts to talk about, what our report also looks at, is how do you bring people from outside the industry into the industry? That's going to be so important to actually do what we need to do systemically, which is bring more people into this space to work on climate. Now, Dr. Spinrad, you're in charge of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's not the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Jobs Administration, but you run a lot and fund a lot of climate jobs programs. Maybe could you walk us through some of what those programs are when it comes to building a climate resilient and climate ready workforce?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll put it in context and ask those of you to think back who can. 40 or 50 years ago, when there was a revelation that there was an emerging weather industry, a commercial weather enterprise. And I know that many of us who work in the federal government said, we really don't see it. What is that? Well, it's turned into AccuWeather, the weather company, WeatherBug, and it's an industry. It's about a $10 billion industry with maybe 10,000 jobs associated with it. Think about what that was. It was taking the public services provided by national weather services around the world, translating it to a value-added service economy. We have the same situation on steroids with climate. There is a climate commercial enterprise. When I started my job as NOAA administrator about 4 years ago, I said, I want to start meeting that industry. I want to start meeting the people who are actually going to be hiring in this space. I had over 100 meetings with startups, established companies, in what I actually call the climate industrial complex. It is estimated to be a $1 trillion market in the next several years, with concomitant growth in the kind of positions available. So, when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, we carved out about $60 million of that because we were trying to build at NOAA this concept of a climate-ready nation with all of our various products and services. But we recognize a climate-ready nation demands a climate-ready workforce. And so with that carve-out of funds in what we call climate-ready workforce, we've been able to, with that initiative, fund 9 specific efforts around establishing the workforce. And I want to take a minute to share with you some examples of what that investment would look like. So we're supporting the tribal government that's on St. Paul Island in the Pribilofs in Alaska to build an indigenous workforce that can help support things like the fishing industry in Alaska with a recognition of how climate is going to change the distribution, the availability, the species that are going to be comprising the fisheries market in the Bering Sea in the future. So it's centered on the use of indigenous knowledge in conjunction with modern Western development of forecast systems for fisheries species. We're also working with the Flood Mitigation Association industry. Now, flood is one of the critical hazards associated with climate we're trying to address. What we need in this case is climate-resilient skilled workers, specifically in areas of Louisiana and Mississippi that have been hard hit by sea level rise and by flooding. And what this will do is, again, focusing on underserved communities, train the communities, train those new workforce members on how to use the flood mitigation tools. What exactly is a seasonal flood forecast, and how do you interpret the uncertainty associated with that? And where do you go to get quantitative and authoritative climate information? So building these programs, and those are just 2 examples, have been part of what we're doing as a new initiative around building a climate-ready workforce. And then we've also tried to build some products, some training products like our Climate 101, Science, Impacts, and Society. So we're trying to build the tools, the curricula, the training plans, and also provide the data and the model products that can be used for this new workforce.
You know, I think that makes so much sense, and I think so much of what Dr. Spinrad's talking about is that this idea that climate change is already changing the world of work. These are jobs that we the weather in particular is changing, and that means that we have to build things like climate risk into how a lot of people are doing jobs. And we see this in our data, especially in like the asset management field in particular. And I've heard a lot of conversations at this COP about even the insurance market, about how you build insurance markets. And that's a field where what we actually see is people who've worked in insurance for decades may not have the right skills. And we see that teams building in new insurance teams that have climate scientists as part of them, because they have to figure out how to build in this risk. Now, you've heard a lot about programs in the United States that are doing this work, and Adwa, you have, I think, a really unique perspective globally, and can help us maybe go from this big idea to some of these really tangible and tactical ideas. What does it actually look like to develop a program that helps people learn these skills to work on climate change?
So Education Development Center is a global nonprofit, that works at the intersection of education, entrepreneurship, and climate action in the United States, but also across the world. And so to empower or prepare youth for the green economy, we implement Our World, Our Work, which is a 10-year global initiative that, seeks to integrate 1 million youth in green jobs by 2030, 60% of whom will be women. To answer your question, I think I'd start off by saying that, first and foremost, youth must leave schools, TVET institutions, training programs with the specific market-driven, transferable, technical, and life skills that employers need if the youth are opting for, joining the workforce, or relevant skills for entrepreneurship if that's the pathway that they so choose. So programs really must seek to design their programs with that end goal in mind. Secondly, employing a localized systems-based approach is critical. And so initiatives really have to seek to operate at scale, because that's the only way that you can really maximize sustainable impact. And so our experience has shown that by starting off with localized labor market assessments, we're able to identify the green and blue jobs that are available on the ground. As you can understand, it differs from country to country, community to community. And so conducting these local labor market assessments really enables us to pinpoint the specific opportunities, but also the specific skills that we need to develop in a given community. And these assessments really have to be done in a collaborative, integrated approach by bringing to the table youth and letting them play a critical role in that, bringing together representatives, from private sector, government, employers in general, training institutions, because everybody has a role to play. And so we found that most effective programming, employs such an approach. As a quick example, in Rwanda, for example, in order to address this issue, they partnered with EDC to conduct one of these rigorous assessments. It was specifically for areas that are prone to flooding, river buffer areas that are prone to flooding because of climate change. And at the end of the process, we were able to identify 35,000 blue and green jobs just for that specific sector. And many of those were actually prioritized by government, for investment. And the plan is for government to be able to run public works type programs to be able to absorb a lot of those, also providing opportunities for entrepreneurship, not just for youth, but women and other marginalized groups. With regards to training, we found that you really must work through existing systems, and at the local level in the countries in which we work, it means working through local associations, government systems that may already be there. When you arrive, it is a waste of time to reinvent the wheel, and so making use of what the infrastructure that exists is critical. To your point, for us, we emphasize that we are not just talking about the new types of jobs that the green transition will bring. Okay, we're talking about all jobs. So how can we green all training curricula to make sure that a local hairdresser, is now thinking about how to use hair products that are safer for the environment? Or with regards to agriculture, which is critical in these economies, what are the climate smart, approaches and technologies that can be used at that level? Employers, as I mentioned, need to be at the table. They help in terms of offering what we call work-based learning opportunities. So this is not creating internship opportunities after a 6-month training program, because we have found that that's too late. But we find that most effective programming creates these opportunities for youth to get exposed to the workplace, to learn about behavioral, ways in conducting oneself, that are professional, or that skills that they need to pick up in the workplace. And so apprenticeships, shadowing, site visits at the community level are also critical. And of course, you have the private sector plays a key role with this. And one last example, in Senegal, for example, we worked with the Rwandan, in Senegal, we were able to work with government to institutionalize this approach, whereby we were able to help them integrate work readiness skills and after-school entrepreneurship clubs into their existing national curricula at lower secondary schools. And so this is huge. We're talking about systems-based approaches. We're able now to talk about transformation at a national scale, such that every year more than 40,000, secondary school students are accessing these employment, leadership, and entrepreneurship skills that are going to certainly make a difference. Just to share a few examples. Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin. I love how you brought up that jobs are changing. So at LinkedIn's data, we actually can see that between 2015 and 2030, the average job will change. The skills will change 65%. So think about a job in being 30 skills. 18 of those skills will be different between 2015 and 2030. And overwhelmingly, those new skills are digital, and AI accelerates that, green, and human. And human, I think, is really important there. And so much of that, when we talk to employers, goes back to what I was saying about how do people show up at work, how do they work with other people, and how do they solve problems. I think one person who probably has experienced that changing job is Tom. A funny story about Tom. Tom and I actually both live in San Diego, and it took probably about 5 miles from each other, and it took us coming all the way to Baku to meet in person, which I think is like the story of COP in a nutshell. But Tom, we're all talking about how these jobs change. I think you've lived it. How are jobs changing? And what do you think will those jobs continue to change in the future? And what skills will people need to know to be part of this climate workforce moving forward?
Sure, yeah. People have already made some great points up here, so I'll just be repeating some of the things that have already been said. I think the economy is changing in fundamental ways. As you just mentioned, we're seeing challenges of the climate crisis and also the rise of artificial intelligence and mechanization fundamentally changing the workforce in the United States and globally. And I think we know from our past experience in recent decades with globalization and skill-biased technical change that whenever there are these seismic shifts in the job market, there are going to be winners and losers. And I think the job of academia and the job of the public sector is to ensure that those who are negatively impacted by these changes are trained to adapt. And that is something that we do in the work that I'm engaged in. So in my work, I speak a lot with local sustainability managers at the local jurisdiction level, county and local jurisdictions, and they all tell me the same thing. They know what needs to be done. They have a pretty good sense. They're often interested in knowing what other jurisdictions, similar jurisdictions are doing, but they have a good sense of what the policies are that are needed. But they keep telling me that they don't have enough people who are able to do the jobs that are needed. So examples, installing EV charging stations or retrofitting homes and buildings, electrifying buildings and installing new electric heaters in place of gas heaters and so on. So I think in academia we have a responsibility to train the workforce to be able to do these new jobs. One program that I'm involved in is in the Central Valley of California. So this is a NOAA-funded climate adaptation partnership. We're called the California-Nevada Adaptation Program. And we have a project in the Central Valley of California, in the southern Central Valley, the San Joaquin Valley. The region faces twin challenges. On the one hand, the major industry is oil and gas extraction. So that is being phased out in California, a transition to net zero. On the other hand, the other major industry is agriculture. And in California, we expect to lose a third to two-thirds of our snowpack in the southern Sierra Nevada. And at the same time, there's policy that has been instituted, the 2016 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And academic studies suggest that by the time that is fully implemented in 2040, we will have to idle 40% of the agricultural land in the San Joaquin Valley. So imagine that the two major industries phase out of fossil fuels and an idling of 40% of land. What is the community supposed to do? And some of the potential solutions would be agrivoltaics, for example, transition to renewable energy. But to do that, we need to train the workers to be able to do those jobs. And in our program, we develop curriculum. We develop curriculum that trains students in climate information technology so that they can go into the workforce with that knowledge. And one of the things that we do early and often is we consult with industry. We consult with industry, labor groups, environmental groups, and we do this to develop the curriculum that is actually needed.
I think thanks for sharing those specific examples. I think oftentimes when we talk about our insights, and I think even lots of other insights that have come about what these jobs and skills look like, it's hard to conceptualize without having some of those kind of specific examples. So thanks for kind of sharing some of that. I've got a couple, we'll say, lightning round questions for you all. And I think the first really is, what this work seems to require a lot of an extra investment. And I'm curious, what hurdles or barriers have you all seen, maybe Dr. Spinrad, we'll start with you, to building this workforce? And what maybe are some strategies you've seen be successful in overcoming those barriers, whether those are real or perceived?
We have about 6 hours for the barriers. Is that
Yeah.
just real briefly, I think you actually alluded to one, and that is you talked about, was it 65% new skills over the next couple of decades? There's a skills gap, and you can think of that in terms of, for example, I can say in my own agency, an understanding of social, behavioral, and economic sciences is not inherent in the skill set of most meteorologists and oceanographers that I know. But understanding what exactly are the limits of uncertainty associated with the products and services we develop that are going to be needed for the workforce in the future. So that's just one example of a skills gap. Another hurdle, I would say, is having to deal with the challenges of equity. What works in one neighborhood with one community in terms of training, job training, career development, may not work elsewhere. And sometimes it's as fundamental as there still is a digital divide, especially in underserved areas. So this assumption that some of the training activities can be undertaken using the most modern IT-based tools may not be a safe assumption. And then the third hurdle is one of communications, just the fact that we're having this discussion. Everybody here at COP understands something about climate change and how there is an emerging market for these products and services. But as soon as you go outside these gates, figuratively speaking, you're faced with a communication challenge as to why do we need a workforce specifically tied to understanding how to apply climate products and services. And oh, by the way, what is the nature of the climate impacts on my areas of interest? So communications, dealing with equity challenges, and addressing the skills gaps are the three major hurdles that I see.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Maybe Carla, we'll go to you next.
Right. Well, we have seen a real significant increase in the U.S. of clean energy manufacturing. So just in the past 4 years, we've seen over 900 announcements of new factories or expanded factories that build technologies like solar, like batteries. Just looking at batteries, we're projected to have a 10x increase in battery cell manufacturing capacity. We've got gigafactories building batteries. But we see a disconnect between what the companies need in the workforce and then folks coming out of vocational programs, coming out of colleges. So this is where we have found this fundamental role of government in that the battery companies, they have their own secret technology, their own proprietary approach, but they have actually allowed us in the federal government to come in, walk the factory floor, figure out what are the types of skills that they really need. And then we have anonymized that information, passed it on to our community colleges, to our unions, to our vocational training programs to speed up the natural equilibrium that would have taken many years to happen, so that the students coming out of these programs are then positioned to directly get a job in one of these new factories. So that type of information sharing is helping us with speeding up this barrier where we would have had some natural adjustment over time.
Yeah, I think both of you have kind of laid out this, like, there's a skills gap, some of which is real. The skills we need to learn for the jobs that are in demand, some of which is also perceived. And I think for some of it, for a lot of these factories that are building new tools or new products, no one's done that work before. And so a lot of it comes down to employers being part of that ecosystem to help train and build that workforce. Adwa, you work all around the world, so you've got, I'm sure, have an interesting perspective on some of the barriers that might get in the way of us having this workforce we need right now.
So to build on what has already been said, I'd like to highlight the coordination gap. As more and more actors join the climate space and this line of work, we're finding that there's insufficient communication and coordination amongst ourselves. So not just at the international level, but all the way down through to the local level. There's insufficient knowledge about what one partner is doing, or how we can combine efforts, to really maximize efforts. And so some of you may have heard this week that a group of organizations, including EDC, GIZ, NDCP, WRI, and Systemic, are calling for a global initiative to really raise awareness to the importance of skilling that is really going to be focusing on how a handful of champion countries are getting this right. Conducting research and looking deeper into the issue, helping to raise funds. And so, again, at the table, we'll have philanthropists, representatives from the business world, government, and other groups. And so, I wanted to highlight the coordination gap. We're obviously all aware of the financing gap, but one thing that I wanted to add, which is critical for projects in these developing countries, is that people on the ground, unfortunately, are simply not seeing the benefit of all these climate targets and goals and ambitions that are being set. We need to do more to let the limited funding that has already been made available trickle down to the ground. What does that look like? For a youth who is seeking to, green their agricultural adventure, and I'm talking small-scale activities in villages, they need very little, comparatively speaking, capital to be able to launch, an income-generating activity or start a green business. But banks, regional banks and community banks, see them as threats. And so what are we doing, to really increase their access to products that can really be really capital in helping them, make this green transition? And maybe a last one to add to what was said already about equity. We also see an inclusion gap. So yes, women, children, indigenous communities are often most affected by climate change. But we also see that even in programming, they're often left out. That's the irony of it. And so we need to do more to be intentional about creating opportunities and including them from the design through to the implementation, and ensuring that their ideas are worked into the strategies that we think are going to work for their communities. And I have a handful of projects that we do working specifically with indigenous communities in the Philippines, Indonesia, across Africa, just to illustrate that it is possible. It's being done, and representation matters, especially in these communities. Seeing a woman, who may be living with disabilities, working a tractor, is something that may not be a big deal in other parts of the world, but in some of these communities, it's life changing. And so we need to do more collectively, to support some of the marginalized communities to really get the same opportunities and access to the resources that we are here to make available. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Adwa. And Tom, we'll turn to you. But one of the barriers that strikes me, especially for communities that are on are in declining industries, is this tension between making this transition and what has really been an identity of who those workers have been. Oftentimes being really, I've worked in mining, and generations of my family have worked in mining or worked in agriculture, and now we're obviously making big shifts. I'm curious, as you think about how to help those communities see around the corner, what are some of the successes you've had in overcoming that? Building identity, or thinking about identity as one of the challenges that becomes in some of those communities?
Sure, yeah, I think that is a real challenge. I mean, what we need are jobs that have job security, opportunity for advancement, but that are also give people a sense of respect and dignity. And you're right, when people are switching from, say, coal mining to developing wind farms or solar arrays, this is very different, and it's a very different identity. But I think there's always been, at least in America, there's always been the resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit to move forward in these ways. So I think as an academic, my role is to facilitate what I think has driven all of the major technological changes in the United States in the last century, which is unleash the power of private innovation through public sector incentives with the support of academia, but engaging at the local level. So I think the biggest challenge that I see is actually getting that traction, and that has to be on the ground. And for us in our program, we've been working directly with community colleges. So in California, we have 10 UC schools, which are world-class research organizations, institutions. We have 23 state schools, and we have 116 community colleges. So in these rural communities, often with declining industries, one of the center points is the community college. And so by working directly with them, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can work with a group that is already trusted in the community, and we can build new training programs that way.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. I think, you heard, TVET, which is maybe not necessarily an acronym we hear much in the United States, but really, I think refers much of the work that community colleges are doing, and community colleges are going to play an important role. We have a few more minutes before we turn it over to Dr. Spinrad for some closing remarks, but I want to maybe rapid fire, and maybe we'll make sure that Dr. Spinrad and Carla get to talk about this. There are a couple groups. One, equity is really important. You guys have touched upon equity. And there's obviously been a few groups that are, historically been left out of some of this economic transformation, and we have a chance with this climate transition to get it right, to be much more inclusive. I'm specifically thinking about indigenous communities, and we already know there's a gender gap especially in some of the fields that are going to be essential to the climate transition. So I'm wondering if both of you, maybe we'll start with Dr. Spinrad, then go to Carla, about how the federal government is trying to look at supporting some of these underrepresented communities with maybe an emphasis on indigenous communities and women.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll try to be brief and just give a couple of the highlights. And one is, and you implied it in your question, engage early on. Do not make the assumption that you know what the requirements are for developing workforce training, job opportunities for underserved, underrepresented communities, but have that dialogue early on. What do you need? What does it need to look like? What are the kind of constraints? The other thing I would say is think about a complete set of products and services. So at NOAA, in some of the projects that I referenced, we are obviously incorporating training curriculum, but also what I'd call the wraparound services. So those would be things like childcare, transportation, stipends, the kind of things that actually facilitate, especially in underserved communities, the ability to implement some of these job development opportunities. And then the last point is, it sounds a little trite, but create the jobs. And this is where I'm really excited about having the discussion with LinkedIn. Do not assume that the current job categories, the current career positions define with just a little adjustment what's going to happen. Remember webmasters when they first came out? We didn't know what the heck these things were, but now we understand that's a critical component of modern social networking, is those kind of careers that need to be defined. We can define them now. So I would say those are the main things we need to do, especially with some of the underserved communities.
Perfect. Carla.
Well, thanks. And we've been working through some new approaches. One of those is targeting what we call energy communities. So communities where they used to have a coal mine that closed. They used to have a coal plant that closed. And we have targeted several government programs where there's grants specifically available to those communities. And then we have representatives going into the communities to say, okay, here's the opportunity for you. But one really big example that we've seen a lot of success from is what we're calling a community benefits plan. So we say we have public dollars from these infrastructure laws we mentioned, and companies can come to the government and compete to get those public dollars to build a generation facility, to build a factory. But what we said to those companies is, okay, you come in with your application, but we are requiring you to come up with a community benefits plan. And in that plan, you need to show us you have talked to the community, engaged with them to see what they want, that you have thought about local labor. Can you get workers from the local area instead of bringing them in? You have to have considered diversity, equity, inclusion. What are those strategies? How is that going to work? And you have to have specifically figured out how are some of the benefits from your project going to directly flow to the community. 40% or more to the communities that you mentioned that haven't historically gotten those. So we started requiring these plans, and then we said, okay, we're looking at your grant application, we're giving you a score to compete to see who gets the money. If you have a better plan, you get a better score and you are more likely to get government dollars. Now, when we first started doing this, a lot of the companies started coming to us to say, oh, this is just too much, we can't do this, why are you requiring this? Why is the government intervening in this way? But then after several of those projects started to get underway, those same companies came back to us and said, wow, this was a really significant risk reduction for our project. We engaged much more with the community than we would have. They're much happier with the project, and the project is going way better than it was going to go otherwise. So that opportunity for risk reduction for the companies turning into direct benefits for the community has been transformational, and that is an approach we are doing across all of our large infrastructure projects and is now spreading across the entire federal government.
So thanks for that, and I want to invite Dr. Spinrad up to give some closing remarks, but I'll just start by saying when we often talk about what this work looks like, it often requires a lot of cross-training, and if you didn't know that he was the NOAA administrator, you might have thought he was in the Department of Labor with the way he's been talking about jobs and skills. And I think that's so much of what this work needs to look like in practice. So Dr. Spinrad, closing remarks, please.
Thank you. And let me just start by saying it's been wonderful to work with LinkedIn on this session, and I think it characterizes the way the public-private sector has got to work towards this new opportunity for job development. And the discussion has really underscored the demand for climate-related jobs, and also, as we heard from each of the speakers, the evolving skill sets required across industry, technology, and also geographic regions. And as we continue to navigate the century that is clearly shaped by climate change, a climate-ready workforce is going to form the bedrock of a climate-ready nation. The work being done by NOAA, by DOE, is helping to position the U.S. as a global leader in developing that climate-ready workforce, setting an example for other developed nations while also supporting capacity development efforts in the developing world. We've done a really great job, I think, of building the momentum around our climate-ready workforce and equitable climate services. I talked about the effort we're doing with our climate-ready workforce, and you heard there are many other examples of investment by the public sector. Cross-sector and global partnerships are going to be essential to create job opportunities and provide funding for skill-building programs focusing on education and strategies for tailoring federal solutions to local challenges. The workforce needs that we've discussed here today are going to evolve in the years to come. I really look forward to COP 30, 31, 32, 33, and the evolving discussion with respect to workforce development. Just let me frame this with a few numbers. The climate economy is projected to expand rapidly. Green jobs in the U.S. are expected to reach nearly 24 million just by 2030. That's 14% of total U.S. employment. This rapid growth is going to create a significant gap as the demand for skilled workers in green sectors far outpaces the current supply of qualified candidates. In fact, green job postings are growing nearly twice as fast as the number of workers with the necessary skills to fill them today. The jobs of tomorrow will also increasingly be shaped by automation, by digital transformation, and the need for sustainability. Workers are going to need the new skills to keep pace with this evolving job landscape. As the other panelists and I have highlighted, there are already several initiatives in place to help close this gap, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. The shifts driven by the climate economy, the climate industrial complex, will be transformative, and we must work collaboratively to prepare our workforces to lean into them. In addition to scaling up existing programs, we've got to form new partnerships to meet those challenges. Think about, here's your homework assignment, think about who's not here. Who is not, we got tens of thousands of people here, who's not here that needs to be part of these job opportunities? Thank you, there's your first answer, I couldn't agree more. Diversifying the workforce is essential for a successful and equitable transition to sustainability. A lot of times, the people affected by local impacts of climate change are best suited to drive solutions, and we want to make sure everyone is able to take a slice of this economic opportunity up front, early on, from the get-go. Every career has the potential to make a meaningful impact on climate change, and everyone should be empowered with the tools and opportunities to make a difference in their chosen field. So in closing, sustainability and profitability are synergistic goals. The challenges we face are formidable, but so is our opportunity to build a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economy through the workforce of the future. Thank you. In thanking our panelists, our co-hosts, for a wonderful session. Thank you very much.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. If you are hearing this, congratulations, your headset is working properly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the U.S. Senate here at COP29 and our event, the Inflation Reduction Act, Changing the Trajectory for Climate-Smart Agriculture and Forestry, Energy Transition, and Rural Economies. It's my honor to introduce Sean Babington, the Deputy Chief of Staff, the Office of the Secretary for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Tom, and good afternoon, everybody. As Tom said, my name is Sean Babington. I work at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and welcome to our event on the Inflation Reduction Act, Changing the Trajectory for Climate-Smart Ag, Forestry, Renewable Energy, and Rural Communities. We're going to bring together key partners to discuss the critical roles that they are playing in the implementation of this landmark legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act, which we also call the IRA for short. We're going to have a conversation with key voices from the agriculture and forestry sectors who are working with their membership and their partners on the ground to make critical progress in implementing this law. First, to introduce the landmark legislation and really tee up this important dialogue, we're going to hear from two leaders in the federal government who will share what the IRA means from their perspectives for their two federal departments and where we can go from here in implementing this important law. We've got a lot of content to cover and not a lot of time to do it. So I'm going to get right to it and introduce USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack.
Sean, thanks very, very much. And first and foremost, to the panelists, thank you for being part of this opportunity to sort of explore the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act from the ground up. And I want to thank all of you for attending this very important event. As Sean indicated, Congress passed and President Biden signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. Now, this legislation, I think it's fair to say, marks the largest investment in direct action and conservation in world history. It has changed the directory and trajectory of emission reductions in the United States and has included significant investments for USDA and other agencies touching on agriculture, forestry, and the energy sectors. These USDA investments, totaling nearly $40 billion US dollars, presented an historic once-in-a-generation opportunity for communities that we serve and that we care about. Today, you're going to hear perspectives from agriculture, forestry, and land sectors on what this effort has meant for communities across the United States. These investments will support a future led by these communities, where they are taking action not only to reduce emissions, but also to be more resilient in the face of a changing climate. And we're doing this in a way that builds rural economies and livelihoods. But first, let me give you a brief overview of the investments that USDA has made as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, starting with the agricultural sector. As a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS, we're investing an additional $19.5 billion over 5 years in oversubscribed USDA conservation programs that support farmers who want to implement climate-smart practices. These funds provide direct climate mitigation benefits, advance a host of other environmental co-benefits, and expand access to financial and technical assistance for producers to adopt conservation on their farm, their ranch, or their forested area. As a result, USDA has been able to provide additional support for practices like cover cropping, conservation tillage, wetland restoration, prescribed grazing, nutrient management, manure management, tree planting, and much more. Since its implementation began in 2023, this climate-smart conservation assistance has already provided help to farmers and ranchers in conservation in tens of millions of acres of land in the United States, on top of the conservation and climate-smart agricultural assistance that has been available through the normal Farm Bill funding. And these funds are helping folks like Zach Hightower from Shoal Creek Farms in Georgia. Zach wanted to participate in USDA's Environmental Quality Incentives Program, known as EQIP. He wanted to update his poultry houses to improve energy efficiency, but due to the oversubscribed nature of EQIP funds, his application was delayed. Thanks to the IRA funding, Zach is now able to find the assistance he needed in 2023. He's now upgraded his poultry houses. They're more efficient. They're saving money on energy costs while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We recently announced making an additional $7.7 billion of this funding available in the fiscal year 2025 that began October 1st of this year. This is going to provide financial assistance to producers through our popular conservation programs, and it's more than double the amount that was available last year, the most conservation assistance made available in a single year in the history of the United States. We're also involving partners in this work. Several weeks ago, we announced awards under our Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Now, this allows us to work with partners to expand the footprint of conservation across large landscape operations. The Inflation Reduction Act provided almost $5 billion to boost this work, and we're excited to see how the 92 recently awarded projects will enable and empower conservation. This work is happening in parallel with our Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, which I highlighted at this very venue at an event earlier today. Those partnerships are not IRA funded, but leverage our Commodity Credit Corporation funding to create market opportunities for climate-smart agriculture and forestry commodities. We will need incentives created by both of these efforts, a federal push and a market pull to support the agricultural transition to climate-smart agriculture. Critically, we need to ensure that these climate-smart agricultural practices are providing credible benefits to the climate and the environment. That's the basis upon which we invest our federal funds and support our markets in our climate-smart efforts. To that end, the Inflation Reduction Act also provided USDA with $300 million to invest in improvements related to our monitoring, measuring, reporting, and verifying of agricultural greenhouse emissions and carbon sequestration and the impacts and effects of conservation efforts. These funds will support a comprehensive strategy to improve data models and tools necessary to accurately quantify the impact of climate-smart activities. As part of this, the funds will establish a soil carbon monitoring network to improve our understanding of the impact of climate-smart practices on soil carbon stock changes over time. In turn, This effort will improve models that will provide us with more comprehensive understandings of the carbon benefits provided under climate-smart farming practices. Now, these aren't the only investments we're making to improve the science. For example, the USDA's complement emphasis on this potential is also leveraging, for example, new fertilizer technologies to reduce nitrous oxide. A few years ago, we invested in the Efficient Fertilizer Consortium, a public-private effort on research to advance efficiency, environmental benefits, and cost-effective fertilizers. This effort has also gained momentum and will help develop technologies with quantifiable greenhouse gas benefits that can make a big difference in agriculture's efforts to address climate change. At the same time, we're also improving our ability to quantify the greenhouse gas benefits of improved fertilizer technology. We've invested $463 million in 70 projects in 31 states and the area of Puerto Rico through our fertilizer production expansion program, helping to essentially create 8 million tons more of expanded capacity of carbon-free or carbon-reduced fertilizer. One of the goals of this program was to help spur the development of fertilizer technologies that will also improve environmental outcomes. For example, a project led by California Safe Soil will expand production of nutrient alternatives based on food recovered from supermarkets that can't be sold or donated. This project is going to create over 1 million gallons of liquid fertilizer for conventional and organic crops every year, and is estimated to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 6,600 tons a year. These investments, combined with our learnings from partnership projects, will allow us to improve our understanding of soil carbon, on-farm greenhouse gas estimation models and tools, farmer adoption and adaptation of climate-smart practices, and much, much more. We're leveraging our International Climate Hub to share research, tools, collaborative efforts, and the best practices to global scale to improve the world's ability to adapt to climate change and to mitigate its impacts. Since we launched the International Climate Hub in 2023, it has become an increasingly relevant resource with over 26,000 active users taking advantage of actionable income and resources on this website. Now, when it comes to forestry, we know that forest landowners and their communities have a significant role to play in tackling climate change. Over 60% of the U.S. forest lands are privately owned. These forest landowners are a key piece of maintaining our forests into the future, which will obviously provide a very valuable carbon sink. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, we've been able to help those communities prepare for climate change while also building and maintaining carbon stocks in private forests across the United States. Just like our agricultural strategy, this work is leveraging the federal investment while also supporting market development, this time focused on the voluntary carbon market. For example, through a $131 million investment supporting 29 projects, we're enabling equitable access to emerging carbon markets. Many of the awardees support underserved landowners located in and providing benefits to disadvantaged rural communities that have not historically been able to take full advantage of carbon markets. This is on top of a $29 million investment that has been focused on states and territories to help them develop the technical assistance programs on their own that connect underserved landowners to incentives, programs, and markets, and $20 million to support federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native corporations and villages to access emerging private markets for forest resilience, climate mitigation, water quality, and carbon sequestration. Combined, this work will help build the markets to drive conservation in the future. The Inflation Reduction Act also allows us to work with states and nonprofits to reduce financial barriers for landowners who are interested in adopting climate-smart forestry practices and making their lands more resilient to climate change. This includes a $140 million investment to support state-endorsed cost-share programs for landowners to adapt climate change by making their forests more resilient to changing climate conditions and to store more carbon on their landscape. It also includes $50 million to programs that issue payments directly to landowners to adopt these practices that will increase carbon sequestration and storage of on their forests. Importantly, the Inflation Reduction Act also provides the USDA a significant decarbonization in the energy sector as well. Through an historic investment from the Inflation Reduction Act, we're working now with partners to implement clean energy, including solar, hydro, wind, nuclear, and more in rural communities. These clean energy investments are lowering costs for rural communities, creating new jobs and real economic opportunity. These communities are now leading the clean energy transition with USDA supporting nearly 8,500 individual farmers and rural small businesses that now have their own clean energy and energy efficiency systems through our Renewable Energy for America program. 72 community-scale clean energy projects to generate clean power and local revenue for rural communities. Over $13.5 billion announced in grants and loans to support the transformation of rural electric cooperatives to clean energy, reaching 1 in every 5 rural farms, businesses, homes, and schools in the country. This effort represents the largest investment in rural electrification in the United States since President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Act in 1936. The scale of this is massive. These energy investments are fundamentally changing the energy makeup of rural America. This is going to generate 11 gigawatts of new clean energy for rural communities and reduce by more than 47 million tons greenhouse gases annually from those utilities. That's equivalent to removing 10 million gas-powered cars off the road every single year. At the same time, it's going to support 4,800 permanent jobs and 18,500 construction jobs in our rural community. Importantly, these investments will also provide, obviously, cost savings for those communities. These investments, I think, demonstrate that we can deliver climate pollution reductions while providing affordable, reliable energy in our rural communities. Let me give you just one example. Through New Era, USDA is providing funding to a member-owned rural electric cooperative to transition to clean energy across the country. Dairyland Power Cooperative is one of the participants in this program. It's leveraging this program to produce over 1,000 megawatts of renewable energy through 8 wind and solar-powered purchase agreements. Now, this project's not only going to help Dairyland with their goal of 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions system-wide by 2030, it's going to create 3,200 short and long-term jobs. It's going to lower costs for businesses as usual for members by over $5.8 million, and it's going to reduce climate pollution associated with that electricity by over 4.3 million tons. This savings translates to energy cost reductions of $471 per year for every one of Dairyland's 700,000 consumers. Folks, we're demonstrating that making the transition to a climate-smart future is the right decision, not just for the climate, but for the economy and for rural communities. The panel you're going to hear from today will provide real-world examples of what these investments mean in rural America. We think this model is not just for the United States. It can be replicated everywhere and anywhere. Beyond supporting our ability to position farms and forests and rural communities as climate leaders, these investments are impacting people in a real and direct way. For farmers who are able to take advantage of new programs, to forested landowners participating in carbon markets, to rural households with lower energy bills, these investments are moving us to a climate-smart future. I want to thank you all for being here because this is an extraordinarily important work. We now have an historic tool to put this work to action for our farms, our businesses, our forested landowners, and for rural America. We hope that you find the panel entertaining and informative. I'm excited about this opportunity, and I look forward to the United States continuing to provide leadership in this area. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, and just an outstanding foundational sort of overview of the Inflation Reduction Act and what it's meaning for rural communities across the country. All the work the Secretary just outlined for the U.S. Department of Agriculture is complemented by several other federal departments that also receive significant funding under the Inflation Reduction Act. And one of those, the Department of the Interior, has advanced the clean energy transition through a host of different opportunities. Tribal electrification, investments in wind and solar on federal land, etc. So to that end, I'm going to invite to the podium here Acting Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Interior and my friend, Laura Daniel Davis, to share a little bit about what's going on at the U.S. Department of Interior. Thank you, Laura.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I know he's already on his way. It was so great to have him here and hear him talk through everything that's happening at USDA. I know some of it. I don't know all of it. I feel like I know almost all of it now. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what's happening at the Department of the Interior with the Inflation Reduction Act and our work. And I really like the way the Secretary framed it, talking about the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act from the ground up, because that's where it really matters. So thank you again for the opportunity. And we all know that the time to act on climate is now. That's why we're all here, from coastal towns to rural farms to tribal communities across the country. Climate change really poses an existential threat, not just to our environment, but to our health, our communities, and our economic well-being. You heard the Secretary hit on that last point in particular. And at the Interior Department, we are working in partnership with a lot of our fellow agencies like USDA to ensure that everyone has a chance to realize a clean energy future. When President Biden took office, he tasked our administration with a call to create 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. You've all probably heard the challenge. And every day since at the Interior Department, we're the permitter for that kind of thing. We've moved really rapidly to create a robust, sustainable, clean energy economy that creates jobs, that boosts local economies, and helps address environmental justice in this work we're doing. When we came into office, there were zero commercial offshore wind projects in U.S. federal waters. Today, we've approved the nation's first 10 offshore wind commercial projects off the coast of the U.S., and it's a capacity of more than 15 gigawatts. So we are halfway there to that challenging goal that the President set for us on day one. Clean, renewable energy, and this is enough to power at 15 gigawatts over 5 million homes. And as I said, we're halfway there to the President's goal. Offshore wind is now, we haven't just approved these projects. Some of those projects are now already delivering power to the U.S. coast, to communities for the very first time ever. We do know that a thriving offshore wind industry is going to continue to support and drive economic opportunity off the Atlantic coast, off the Pacific coast. We've even got some things going in the Gulf of Mexico. And we've been working similarly, diligently, in the onshore space. Our Bureau of Land Management has already surpassed its goal of 25 gigawatts by 2025. Obviously, it's still 2024, so we're pretty proud that they're already there, and they've well surpassed it. They've actually facilitated the development of over 29 gigawatts of clean energy on public lands, and that's enough to power 12 million homes out in the landscape. And that tallies up to approval of 41 renewable energy projects, including some of the largest solar and transmission projects that have been approved on U.S. public lands in history. Really important regional projects like the Green Link West transmission line. It's a 472-mile-long project in Nevada. It runs, I know it's called West, it runs north to south, and it's going to connect clean energy sources to about 1.2 million homes. And as we really keep moving to stem really the worsening impacts of climate change that we're all seeing wherever we are, wherever we live, wherever we go. We know that this clean energy, including transmission lines, including the solar projects, wind, geothermal, is going to help communities across the country be part of the climate solution while creating good-paying jobs. These two things go hand in hand, and they're both really important. At the department, as at USDA, as everywhere in the government and beyond, the Inflation Reduction Act has been simply transformative in supporting this work that we're doing. We received $6.4 billion, and it's enabled our bureaus and offices to play really leading roles in advancing things like habitat restoration in key areas, land resilience, water projects, securing environmental justice for historically disadvantaged communities, and do these things at a scale that we have never really been able to do in sort of a 4-year moment or a 2-year moment, I guess, if you're doing the math on the IRA. And for the purposes of today, I really want to sort of laser in on one particular project that has been really important and transformational in an important way for some of our tribal partners. It's the Tribal Electrification Program. It's brand new in the Inflation Reduction Act. And of course, it should go without saying that every family in America should have access to affordable electricity. And yet, for context for everyone, in 2000, the Energy Information Administration estimated that 14% of households on Native American reservations had no access to electricity. Not just some, not quite as good as they'd hoped, none. And that's 10 times higher than the national average. In 2022, the Department of Energy's Office of Indian Energy issued a report citing that almost 17,000 tribal homes were unelectrified, so following on. And most of those, just for awareness, are in the Southwest region or in Alaska. To close this gap, we were able to launch a new tribal electrification program. We got a $150 million investment from the Inflation Reduction Act, and it was really a critical step in allowing us to move forward, trying to electrify more, eventually all, homes in Indian country. And we really focused on providing renewable energy sources so that we could advance the Biden-Harris administration's work to reach a carbon-free electricity sector by 2035. So already this program, and we've moved quickly with it as we have with everything, it's building reliable, resilient energy that tribes and communities can rely on in advancing our work to tackle the climate crisis and build a clean energy future. We're only in the second year, again, math. It's already providing financial and technical assistance to 23 tribes across Alaska and the lower 48 to connect homes to transmission and distribution, and it's all powered by clean energy. We've done it in 3 ways. For unelectrified tribal homes, we have provided the ability to install zero emissions energy systems. We have also assisted tribes and tribal members who want to transition their electrified homes to zero emissions energy systems. And also, really, really importantly, we've been able to utilize some of the resources for associated home repairs, retrofitting that I know you're all familiar with to make your homes more efficient, and then do some planning for them to also be able to install zero emissions energy systems. So sort of a surround of resources and help that we can provide. It's really making a real impact in communities and for communities and families in rural tribal communities. And again, as I said, in some places that have not even had electricity until now. And I just want to say the success of this program just underscores, I think, for all of us, the enduring importance of President Biden's Investing in America agenda. The bipartisan infrastructure law, which we haven't talked about as much, and the Inflation Reduction Act together are just making crucial investments in clean energy development across the country and helping to protect our communities from the worsening impacts of climate change. We're boosting climate resiliency. We're replacing aging infrastructure. And this money it's already allocated to many, many communities across the country. No matter who is in the White House, we know that states and tribes and communities are going to continue to lead the way to accelerate the fight against climate change. And the profound change that we have accomplished would simply not have been possible without partners like everybody in this room and beyond, I'm sure many others in this building. And together we've made really, really meaningful progress together. And these are benefits that are going to last well beyond our administration's transition. And it's really an enduring legacy that we feel is incredibly important to celebrate. I know that's part of what we're doing on the panel. So thank you again for having me. And I'll turn it back to you, Sean, for the panel.
Thank you so much, Laura. And as my fireside chat panelists get situated, just want to thank you for certainly your leadership, but also just tying that so nicely together. You know, the Secretary Vilsack ended on the biggest build out in rural electrification and clean energy in rural areas on privately held land, and Laura picked up the baton and looked at publicly held land, transmission lines, federal waters. It really is a revolutionary investment that we're seeing through the Inflation Reduction Act. So thank you. We're going to transition now to a quick chat here with two absolute leaders in the nature-based climate solutions space. And I'm going to give just very quick introductions because, time is moving so quickly as it always does up here. But really pleased to be joined by Jad Daly. Jad, to my far right, has served as the president and CEO of American Forests since 2018, which is the nation's oldest forest conservation and nonprofit organization focused on climate change, social equity, and during Jad's tenure has overseen a nearly tenfold growth in the membership and size of American Forests. So Jad has a long history of working on these issues, establishing what we call the Forest Climate Working Group domestically in the United States, and leads a whole host of other initiatives as part of his work leading American Forests, including the co-chair of the U.S. chapter of 1T.org, a member of the U.S. Forest Service Forest Research Advisory Council. The list goes on for Jad. The one thing that I will mention, because it was a recent accolade he received, was being named to Time Magazine's influential Top 100 Innovators Driving Climate Action. So, Jad, welcome. Looking forward to hearing from you. And then to my immediate right, Marilyn Hershey. Marilyn and her husband, Dwayne, own and operate Arjoy Farms, a Pennsylvania family farm about an hour west of Philadelphia. And you've just done so much in stewardship over the years, from on-farm practices that conserve water and soil, reducing carbon footprint that way, adopting a methane digester, which is getting rid of methane and the manure on your farm. So you walk the talk, and you've been recognized for it. Marilyn, in addition to working on the farm, is the chairperson of Dairy Management Incorporated. You've received numerous accolades, Soul of Rurality Award from the IECA, which I know many people here are familiar with. 2017 recognized as World Dairy Expo's Dairy Woman of the Year, and the list just, is too long, and we don't have time for it. So I'm just so pleased to be up here with you two leaders. Let's get right into it. Jad, I'm going to direct the first question to you, which is, a recognition that many people at the COP and watching globally know that forests are poised to be such a significant player in mitigating climate change if we can fully unlock their potential with the right actions, the right investments applied to all forested lands. So we have a vast federal estate in the United States, about 193 million acres of federally owned forest lands that the U.S. Forest Service, Department of Interior also owns forested lands, and we have state municipal publicly owned lands. But as the Secretary Vilsack mentioned, the majority of our forested lands are privately owned. So whether we're thinking about those lands, curbing international deforestation in concert with science-based restoration and management, there's just a significant menu of options that we all need to be thinking about working from. So can you talk to us a little bit about how the IRA and other recent investments have empowered American forest landowners to really lead the way in achieving our climate goals?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sean. And I actually want to start by giving special thanks to Secretary Vilsack. That Forest Climate Working Group that you referenced is an incredible cross-section of the U.S. forest community that came together right around the time, actually, that Secretary Vilsack first took on the leadership of USDA, nearly 2 decades ago. And so his leadership has been incredible. USDA has been transformed into a global leader in climate-smart forestry and agriculture, and we've been grateful to be along for the ride in the Forest Climate Working Group and the whole U.S. forest climate community. And I think it's really important. I'm going to talk about the IRA investments and where they fit, but I think it is really important to help people understand it's not just how much we're investing, but it's how we're investing it, what we're investing it in, and the very holistic model that the United States has uniquely pioneered. When we started this work 20 years ago, the conversation started what can carbon markets do to unlock private lands as a climate solution. It was really just about linking up those private markets with private landowners, and we were talking about a very narrow range of forestry practices that were just the ones that seemed like they would fit well within the parameters of those carbon markets. And so I'm just excited that America, as you alluded to, and the Secretary and others, has stepped back and said, let's look at all of our lands and let's look at every possible intervention that we can make, every possible forestry action we can take that's going to unlock some gain in carbon sequestration and in community protection. And I think the first and most important thing that we've done is we've taken an offense and defense approach. We've said, look, every ton of additional carbon dioxide that we pull into our forests has about the same value as every ton that we lose out of our forests, say, for example, to catastrophic wildfire. So the fact that the United States is now saying, let's play offense and defense, if you want to think about them as mitigation and adaptation actions, but how do we create menus of forest practices that span that entire continuum of all the ways we can pull more forest carbon into our forests and keep the carbon there that we have. And I think that's why we're getting the massive net sink that America's forests are providing of over 16% of our carbon dioxide emissions in our country being captured by our forests. But another piece of that is to think about forest products as part of the solution. And I think we've done a great job at the U.S. of recognizing there's a diversity of forest products. There are ways that we can link them to those needed forestry actions. And we can use innovation, coming up with new forest products that fit the needs that we have for materials and also link to the kinds of materials we're taking out of our forests. So we really optimize the role of forest products in climate-smart forestry. And then the last couple of things I'll say I think that are unique about our approach. One is we've sort of broken down the idea that this is about either carbon or it's about habitat or it's about community protection. We're doing multitasking of forest climate solutions and really thinking about all those kinds of goals each time that we're doing them. And then lastly, as you said, we're working across the fullest spectrum of all public lands, indigenous lands, and private lands at all scales. I mean, family forest owners are one of the, folks in some cases holding very small parcels have become one of the most powerful forces in the aggregate for driving these solutions. So we're leaving no acre behind and no potential intervention behind in the United States. And in order to do that, we're thinking more holistically about how to pay for this. So the IRA provides, everything from government investment through grants and incentives and investment in public land management to things that are catalyzing how private landowners can participate in those carbon markets. So I think a holistic approach requires a holistic financing strategy, and we're really doing that, including with help from the IRA. And so in closing, if you look at what the IRA has funded, it's all of this. It's funding forest conservation grants. It's funding wildfire treatments on public and private lands, carbon incentives for private landowners that the Secretary alluded to that helps them undertake new climate-smart forestry practices that they haven't tried before. Ecological restoration grants through the Department of Interior that are funding massive reforestation efforts that are critically important for biodiversity but are also supercharging the carbon outcomes that we're getting from forest ecosystems. And lastly, of special importance to my organization, the largest investment in world history, $1.5 billion in urban forests as a way to protect our communities and as a way to create more carbon-efficient communities. And I hope we'll get back to that one in a bit because it's one of the most unique things that we're doing. We're bringing cities and urban areas into this equation as well, so we don't leave them behind either. So my closing thought is I think we've learned a lot in the U.S. We're now have come up with an approach. We're investing in that approach. We have a proof of concept to share with the world. We're actually doing this stuff. It's not conceptual anymore. And so now is the time for a global community of practice where we learn how other nations are undertaking the same kinds of activities and what can we learn from each other in the executional details so that we do this work better and better as we go forward.
Thanks for that lay down, Jad, and just so many important nuggets to pick at there that I wish we had more time to do. But Marilyn, I do want to turn to you just on you're a dairy farmer. You have seen the impacts of climate change firsthand. And as the Secretary mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act was so unique in that it took tried and true conservation programs that farmers have worked with for decades and looked at them and said, we have a huge backlog of unmet need. People who submit applications but can't get it funded because we don't have enough resource to go around. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act provided an extra $19.5 billion for some of those programs. We're just in the first few years of implementation, but can you maybe speak a little bit about how producers are seeing those investments flow into their communities and the difference that it's already making?
Thank you, and it's a great opportunity to be here. I feel like with the IRAs, it's just starting to snowball. Okay, as you mentioned, we're very early into this, but we're just starting to see the results and see the impacts, and it's broad. Okay, so it goes from the very low risk incentives and investments to the very high risk investments. And when you look at dairy farms, whether they're small, our geography is diverse. The water issues are diverse. Our farm is 40 minutes north of the Chesapeake Bay, so for our dairy farm, it's a water quality issue, and that's something we've been looking at on our dairy farm. If you get out into the west, it's a water quantity issue, and so is the water available? So the solutions that we're seeing from IRA are so broad, but I feel like that's exactly the way we need to be able to reach, whether it's a small farm or a large farm, and I sense the urgency. There's an urgency to make sure that we are offering those solutions and that this snowball can continue to grow, and the needs are very broad, as I mentioned, and I think it's just so important that we continue to offer those solutions to farms, and we are seeing the communities be impacted, and we know that if we have a healthy farm, we have a healthy community.
Absolutely, and it's just so you're at the confluence of so many different things, both as a dairy farmer, which is geographically with being in the Chesapeake Bay, which for those not from the United States is an area that so much conservation in that watershed has been invested there to clean up the rivers that run into the bay that provide a really rich aquatic life, and there's just been so much progress thanks to leaders like you, Marilyn. So thanks for those sentiments and your work on it. I want to switch gears because when we talk about Inflation Reduction Act domestically, I feel like the focus is oftentimes on climate mitigation. What are we doing to sequester carbon or reduce emissions? Which, to be clear, is central and a critical part of implementing that law. But there's also a flip side to that is particularly important, I think, for folks who actually work the land and think about nature-based climate solutions. And that's the resilience and adaptation piece. And so many of these dollars and practices that we're investing in that also have a resilience and adaptation benefit as well. So I'm wondering if you could talk, maybe Jad, I'll go back to you first and we'll go back to Marilyn. How are we seeing these investments also help communities, whether they be urban or rural, become more resilient in the face of climate change?
1,000%, Sean. I mean, look, it's healthy and resilient forests are the climate solution. They're the carbon solution. They're the climate resilience and community protection solution. They're the habitat solution. So actions that enhance the health and resilience of forests in the face of the pressures that climate change is putting on our forests are absolutely pivotal to getting any of the outcomes that we're talking about here. And so I want to talk about one program, two programs in particular, the Forest Landowner Support Program, which is this incentive program that's been referenced a couple of times today, which is paying landowners to undertake climate-smart forestry practices. And what's so cool about it is it's completely thrown open the menu book of what those practices can be, including ones where the benefits will be hard to measure, but we know they're real and tangible. We have good science saying that they're directionally correct, and we need landowners to undertake them over huge areas. And so by creating the flexibility of these carbon incentives, that they can be tied to markets for those practices that do have the right quantification and parameters to participate in markets, but they can also just be direct incentive payments for the ones that we know are important but don't set up well for a market context, is an absolute game changer. And so I think we're going to see an incredible explosion of adoption and innovation in areas like practices that better protect forest soil carbon, a piece of the equation that we've been ignoring, new innovative ways to deal with wildfire resilience and forest health challenges that are being driven, pests and diseases that are being supercharged by climate change. All these stressors on our forests, all these kind of hidden ways in which we're leaking vitality and carbon out of our forests. Because of the Forest Landowner Support Program, we have the chance to help landowners undertake those practices, make them a new business as usual, and finance them in whatever way is most appropriate. I have to come back to the city's piece of this. I mean, the fundamental reality is extreme heat is the number one public health threat from climate change. In the United States, extreme heat already kills 12,000 people per year, and it's projected to kill 100,000 people per year by the end of this century. Trees are like a magical device that were invented to provide nature's air conditioning and clean air benefits. I mean, they are literally perfectly constructed to help us provide the cooling that we need and the clean air benefits that we need without consuming energy. And so I'm just so excited that the United States has embraced this goal of creating equitable tree cover, remedying systemic equities that make a map of trees in our cities, anywhere in the U.S. and around the world, a map of income and a map of race and ethnicity, remedying those inequities. So we got nature's air conditioning running full bore in every neighborhood. And this $1.5 billion that was invested through the Inflation Reduction Act is now rolling out in all 50 states in the United States, being granted to cities and frontline organizations to build long-term, sustainable programs that are delivering tree planting and tree care and job creation in urban neighborhoods all across America, so we can bring nature's air conditioning to these cities. We can protect people from climate change. We can do it in a way that uses less energy and produces less greenhouse gases. That is a winner right there. And the U.S. is showing the world how to do it. And we need every country on earth to be doubling down on this and learning from each other how to get it right.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate you drawing out both of those programs, but particularly the Urban and Community Forestry program has just been such a game changer for so many communities who had the capacity, had the interest, had the drive, but didn't have the resources.
That's right.
So I'll kick the similar question, but probably a different answer over to you, Marilyn. You're a producer. You know how weather and particularly acute extreme weather can just be absolute catastrophic, have a catastrophic set of impacts for farmers and ranchers. Producers in the Southeast know that all too well from the last few months in the United States, where we had two incredibly destructive hurricanes hit within weeks of one another. So from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about the sort of adaptation and the climate resilience benefits of these IRA investments as well?
You know, interestingly, catastrophic issues in the South with the hurricanes. And at the same time, we're having a drought on our farm. It was the driest it's been since 1831. And so the double crop that we planted after we harvested our corn doesn't look so good. And so that's our spring forage. That will grow till it gets cold, and then it will stop growing. And as it warms up in the spring, it'll start to grow again. And then that's a forage that we use to feed our cows. And so to have that's an issue. It's an issue for farmers. And so it's just important that we have these investments to be able to help us through that. I'm going to circle back to part of what you asked, Jad, and when we look at our farm and how we can impact our community, our methane digester is one of those. Dwayne and I put a methane digester in 2017. We've been able to add to that each year, and invest more and more in that. But it's a way for us. It takes the manure from the cows, converts the methane that's captured from that manure, converts it into electricity. We also, being so close to consumers, so close to Philadelphia, New York City, Washington, D.C., we can take food waste off of and get it out of landfills. Food waste is a huge methane emitter that is in landfills, and we can take the methane from the food waste, convert it into electricity. We produce enough electricity on our farm to run our farm, but then there's also enough electricity to go back on the grid and run the community. So it's a way that we can give back to the community. And I know, when Dwayne and I first started building the digester, we had a picnic. We invited all of the neighbors in. We explained to them what we were doing, and they were thrilled. So one of the benefits is, sometimes when you're spreading manure on the fields, there's an odor that goes with that. Okay, and that doesn't always. Actually, my in-laws were probably the neighbors that complained the most. But they're wonderful. We love them. But, it takes the digester will take the odor out of the manure. And so the neighbors were thrilled. And they loved the idea of the green energy going back.
Yeah, it's such a tremendous story when you think about that circular economy. Here's something that was a waste that was going to cost me money to dispose of or cost the environment as it washed downstream, and all of a sudden it's a revenue source. Good.
If I can add one more thing, digesters a lot of times will the narrative that goes with that is that that's only for a large farm. Dwayne and I milk 800 cows. We have a neighboring state, Maryland. There's a farmer in Maryland, the state below us, that milks 150 cows, and he is putting in a methane digester, and it is through the help of Equip that he's able to do this. That's and it's also he will be able to take food waste and incorporate. That's what makes it successful. These investments have to make financial success for farmers, and if they don't make financial success, it's not going to work for the farmer's bottom line. But I'm anxious to see how this works for him because he's been able to figure out how to scale this back, and that's exactly what these investments are intended to do.
Yeah, thank you for closing on that, Marilyn, because I do think there's a perception that sometimes we have to choose only, someone who owns 800 to, 5,000, whatever it is, head of livestock. Or in Jad's case, someone who owns 50,000 acres of forest land if they want to participate in some sort of ecosystem service market. The investments through the Inflation Reduction Act, I think, are showing all of us that when you actually have a thoughtful, dedicated federal program and federal law, again, passed by Congress, signed by President Biden, that thinks about involving the many and the most, the large and the small, because we're going to need it all, you can really see some tremendous uptake and support. So I've got pages more of questions. We are over time already, so I'm sorry that we don't have time for more of them, but just to go back from Secretary Vilsack to Acting Deputy Secretary Daniel Davis, who gave us an outstanding overview of what the Inflation Reduction Act is and the programs and investments that we're already seeing across the country from the leadership side at the federal departments all the way down to Jad and Maryland for how are we working with people on the ground and NGO and civil society to help make these investments as impactful as possible. This has just been a tremendous, I think, event and engagement to really showcase what we're doing. So I hope you'll all join me in thanking our leadership speakers and our panelists. And thank you very much. Thanks.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Winowicki. I'm a soil scientist, and I lead the global research team on soil and land health. How many people have already attended an event on soil health at this COP29? Oh, my goodness. So for the rest of you, this is your first soil health event. Big, warm welcome. I'm so pleased because we always say we really need to reach beyond the already soil lover. So this is fantastic. So a big warm welcome. So I'm Lee Winowicki. I also co-lead the Coalition of Action for Soil Health, and we are so pleased. This is our very first event in the U.S. Pavilion. Today we have an amazing panel that will help us get through some of the, gloom and doom and really focus on solutions. This is going to be a solutions event. We're going to talk about innovations in soil health from all of our speakers, including the closing remarks. So last event of the day, we're going to leave on positive, hopeful messaging. And I'm just going to go through just a few slides. So we already know that soil is globally important for food and nutrition security. You see that number there, right? 95% of our food is grown in soil. But what I would really like you to remember after this event is that healthy soil is critical for so much more. It's critical for biodiversity, for climate change mitigation and adaptation, ecosystem restoration, and of course, providing nutritious food. Does anyone here know just how biodiverse the soil is? That 1 teaspoon of soil has more biodiversity than the number of people on this planet. And today we're going to talk a lot about healthy soil. And there are many definitions, just like anything else, but this is the definition that we like because it really encompasses multiple dimensions. So healthy soil is the ability of soil to sustain productivity, which is what we usually focus on, right? But also diversity and multiple ecosystem services, including, for example, filtering and cycling water. And the reason we're here, and this is the only negative slide, I promise, is because right now over 1/3 of the Earth's surface is already degraded. And this is negatively impacting 3.2 billion people. If any country is going to reach their climate targets, their restoration targets, it's dependent on having healthy, functioning ecosystems. So that means business as usual, and really, business as usual is no longer an option. We desperately need to convince financial investors to invest in soil so that we can really scale healthy soil practices. We really do need to fill those current knowledge gaps so we understand how land management, how agriculture, how forestry, how rangelands are impacting and hopefully improving soil health. And of course, we all know we're at this COP and all countries are updating their NDCs. If you haven't read the Brazil's NDC, please do. And how can we get soil health into the NDCs? So to get to that, we have several objectives of this event. We're going to highlight the role of healthy soil and what's the G word? Green fertilizers. I'm not going to explain it to you because Daniel will be doing that. We also want to galvanize multi-stakeholder action. I'm actually really pleased that only half of you have attended soil event. That means we might have some new people thinking about soil that never thought about it before. And finally, we really want to talk about innovative, out-of-the-box, but practical financing and policy entry points. So with that, I really welcome all of you to this event. We're thrilled to have you. And I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, who's the Director of Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems at RTI. Over to you, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for that extremely inspirational opening. Really appreciate that. Nice to be with you today. My name is Daniel Lapidus. I'm the Director of Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems. I also lead our Center for Climate Solutions at RTI International. RTI is a nonprofit research institute. We're also an international development organization based in the U.S. with a presence in more than 150 countries. Our mission is to improve the human condition by turning knowledge into practice. And aligned with that mission, I'm excited to speak with you today about some work that RTI has done on the potential and the economic viability of green fertilizer. The idea of green fertilizer is gaining momentum all around the world, and especially in Africa, because of its potential to address two main challenges. One, the vulnerability of countries that are dependent on importing fertilizer from abroad, and two, the difficulty of finding scalable and effective options for low emissions development. But before getting into the details, let's talk a little bit about how conventional fertilizer is produced. So many people don't know that ammonia is a key input into the production of fertilizer. Today, more than 70% of the world's ammonia is used to produce fertilizer. It's an extremely carbon-intensive process. Global ammonia is responsible for about 500 million tons of CO2 emissions, or the equivalent of 120 million gas-powered vehicles. And as you can tell, the current method is anything but green. The good news is it does not have to be that way. There are many technically mature pilot demonstrations and commercial deployments of low and zero carbon ammonia all around the world. For the last 7 years, RTI has been developing a green ammonia technology that makes green ammonia more efficient and cost effective. And it has resulted in this pilot scale plant in Minnesota, which was funded by the Department of Energy's ARPA-E program. At this site, we use renewable energy, renewable sources, to produce green ammonia that is completely emissions-free. Green ammonia is exciting because it can be theoretically deployed anywhere that you have sufficient renewable energy resources, qualified labor, and appropriate supply chains. Indeed, green ammonia can be a leapfrog technology, bringing fertilizer to places where it is not currently produced and bypassing conventional, dirtier forms of production. Aside from its vast mitigation potential, producing green ammonia for fertilizer has other benefits. It protects countries from supply shocks, like we saw when the war in Ukraine started. The price of fertilizer skyrocketed, causing many food security challenges in many countries. It can also create jobs and economic opportunities, as production requires investment in production facilities, supply chains, and green energy technology. Also, many countries use foreign reserves, precious foreign reserves, to import fertilizer from other countries. So green fertilizer could also free up those foreign reserves to be used for other purposes. And lastly, for countries that under-apply fertilizer, this technology, along with appropriate application practices, can boost agricultural productivity while minimizing emissions. Given all these potential benefits, at RTI, we decided to build on some of our technology development work to conduct a techno-economic study around the potential of green ammonia for fertilizer, focusing primarily in the African region, the African continent, due to the fact that Africa was hit hardest by the price spikes that I mentioned earlier, the fertilizer price spikes I mentioned earlier, plus of the significant renewable energy resources available in many countries, and the public interest in environmentally friendly development. So we identified and modeled realistic scenarios using different sources of renewable energy at different scales for several countries. So in Kenya, we modeled production from wind, solar, geothermal, and purchased grid electricity, which is 85% green already. In Ethiopia, from geothermal and purchased grid electricity as well, which is largely from hydropower already. And in Nigeria and Morocco from solar and wind. To do this study, we used highly localized data on renewable energy availability, very specific project development costs, fertilizer costs, and we screened for future water risks. So, what did we find? Our research found that the lowest modeled costs of production are in Kenya and Ethiopia. Kenya has the strongest renewable energy resources, a mature renewable energy industry, and an attractive enabling environment, including a roadmap and a strategy for green fertilizer. As you can see, in Kenya, the cost of importing fossil fuel-derived urea for fertilizer, it's that fluctuating white line there, is mostly lower than our modeled costs of green fertilizer development in Kenya. That's that high green line at the top. Except for when the fertilizer prices spiked in 2022. Perhaps the most significant finding is that the main barrier to cost competitiveness has nothing to do with the technology itself. Rather, it's the high cost of capital in African countries. So the difference in fertilizer prices in this graph between the U.S., it's the dotted line at the bottom, dotted green line at the bottom, and Kenya, the solid line at the top, is due largely to the higher perceived risk of investment. The good news is that these financial barriers can be addressed. How? That is the main topic of this COP, right? Climate finance. So where do we go from here? Expanding local production of green fertilizer at scale will require smart policies like reduction or elimination of subsidies or imported fossil fuel-derived fertilizer, or innovative financing like concessionary capital or blended finance or green bonds. At the same time, it's important to avoid any unintended consequences such as the overuse of freshwater resources or the possibility of over-application of fertilizer. And of course, there are trade-offs with other uses of renewable energy that need to be carefully considered. It won't be easy, but the foundation is in place to take green fertilizer from a theoretical idea to a reality. Like many of the climate challenges, the technical solutions are at our fingertips. So let's seize the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that we're already right in the solution. So I'd like to call up our panel. Please, Daniel, take a chair. Tayo, John, and we can take turns. If you want to use the microphone or you want to come up here, I think that's great. And thanks for mentioning trade-offs, because of course we want to be positive and innovative, but we also have to recognize that there are trade-offs. And I really love this graph of, really financially how feasible is it to invest in green fertilizers. And I know there's many other solutions out there, and I want to warn the audience that we will have time for Q&A, so get your questions ready. But John Mundi from One Acre Fund, the Director of Global Partnerships and Climate Finance, so very appropriate to have you on the panel. One Acre Fund has been doing quite innovative, having quite innovative approaches around social entrepreneurship to scale sustainable ag and invest in healthy soil. So I would like to give you the floor to share with us and give us hope of this really innovative model that you've been using. So you can come here, you can go there, wherever.
I'm not used to podiums, so I don't have a fancy speech to read to you. Yes, so thanks, Lee. One Acre Fund is a non-profit social enterprise. We serve. We started in 2006, and we started with 38 farmers in Western Kenya and 6 farmers in Western Rwanda, and we now serve 5 million farmers in 10 countries in Africa. Those farmers typically have less than 1 acre of land, and on average are growing a combination of maize and beans or some other staple crops, depending on the country and context. Our model as a non-profit social enterprise is to provide a complete, what we call market bundle to smallholder farmers. So we provide logistics support, training through field staff, access to finance, and access to markets. Now that is a pretty traditional ag finance model, and we know that it works. Every year, compared to control farmers, One Acre Fund delivers about 40% increase in profits at the farm gate every year, and that translates directly into school fees and meals at home. About 40% of our clients, though, still report moderate levels of hunger. So we can't forget, whenever we're financing this community of the extreme poor, that we're financing the extreme poor who are often also very hungry. And that was our original mission, to help finance farmers who are hungry. The tragic irony that farmers who grow our food are often the hungriest. But now today we realize that we have a climate change and soil health crisis. And we cannot ignore the fact that a monoculture maize system, even if it's very effective with smallholder farmers, is no longer going to be viable in the face of climate change. I just want to double tap on a few problems. And I'm sorry, I will try and get to hope. But I do want to double tap on some problems on the soil health crisis, because I think that's where Lee and the Cash Alliance is most passionate and also driving a really important message. With our own data, we're seeing about 20% of the fields that we serve non-responsive to fertilizer. Doesn't matter if it's green ammonia, sorry. It doesn't matter if it's organic or inorganic, really. What really matters is organic matter and restoring soils where farmers are. And the soil acidification crisis on top of that, which is interrelated, and then the soil erosion crisis. So we see on farmers' fields around $50 to $100 worth of nutrients on every acre lost to soil erosion every year. Now, picture this. Our average finance package for a smallholder farmer farming maize and beans is $73. So if they're losing $50 to $100 of soil nutrients every year and we're financing $73, what's the point, right? And over time, that's just going to get worse. So some of the solutions, and I'll try and get to the hope very quickly. Look, we as a social enterprise, essentially, we're a big blended finance model. When we talk about blended finance, we're mixing grants, concessional working capital, and hopefully we'll include some carbon finance in the future. And that means we can be responsive to demand cycles, farmers' needs, etc. We're seeing in the organic inputs and soil amendment space a lot of hope, a lot of great providers. Green ammonia could be one solution to decarbonize the input supply chain. But when you talk about financing soil health, it gets tricky. And this is where we really need to be smart about the bundle of financial interventions, not just the bundle of services that smallholders get, but also the bundle of financial interventions. So you can blend in a bit of carbon finance in your kind of bouillabaisse of support. You might have some carbon that makes the price of green ammonia cheaper, because at the moment it's about double the price of conventional fertilizer in some of our markets. So carbon finance is going to be very viable for bringing that cost down. Lime, really important. We see when lime is subsidized, farmers adopt it around 20 to 30%. That's actually very high. Without subsidies, it's around 4%. So you have to subsidize some of these products, but you don't have to just get that from government subsidies. USAID, don't worry. But I do think we can repurpose some subsidies to finance these products and services. Now, how do you really finance the stuff that's hard? Soil erosion control, etc. That's where agroforestry systems are so important, because if you can intercrop agroforestry systems with crops, you are going to have a radical reduction in soil erosion over time. But that takes 5 to 10 years to get there, because trees take time to grow, newsflash. So carbon markets can finance that. We're exploring various partnerships with Rabobank, Acorn, etc. We have 4 intensive agroforestry pilots. We're seeing slow progress, but with high carbon prices, I think we can invest in significant increase in agroforestry systems over time. Lastly, I'll just say that there's one hidden component of the financing piece that's really important beyond grants, because we all know grants are important, and I'm not going to bang that desk now because Lee won't like it. But insurance is super important. And actually, insurance is one of the most effective devices to incentivize crop diversification for crops that fix nitrogen, that will help with organic matter in the soil, cover crops, for example, as well. However, insurance at the moment is badly designed for smallholder farmers. And so if we can expand the coverage of insurance and de-risk how they invest in their farms and how we invest in their farms, we can radically increase the amount of diversification and species and biomass on farm. I'll leave it there.
Okay, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for highlighting that we can't just rely on the traditional funding sources that we used to have. We need to be innovative. We need to be combining different funding sources and really to tackle these crises. You said climate crisis, soil health crisis, so that was brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think when we talk about this, not only do you need blended finance, but we also need blended partnerships. So I'm really glad that we have some government representatives here. So Tayo is the climate advisor for the Foreign Service of the U.S. government. And I know you have a lot of programs and a lot going on, can speak to pretty much anything. If you need a great panelist, Tayo is there. But I would like you to talk about the role of innovation for climate change mitigation and adaptation from policy to practice. So over to you, Tayo.
Thank you. I'm going to grab my water real quick. And I'll speak from up here. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Daniel and John. I'm really, really happy to be on this panel. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm learning a lot from both of you on just some of the innovations that your organizations are doing on soil health. So thank you for teaching me. So I'm going to just kind of speak a little bit more broadly on USDA's efforts in climate innovation. And just to reiterate, my name is Tayo Akingbe. I'm a climate advisor with the Foreign Ag Service at USDA. So first I'm going to just talk a little bit about the importance of climate smart ag and some of these practices. So as discussed, the changing climate is creating immense uncertainty and threatens the resilience of our agriculture and forestry sectors. As ag producers across the U.S. are facing the challenges of climate change, with some of the more familiar effects now occurring more frequently or intensely, while others are new and unprecedented. It has wide impacts on the system we rely on to produce our food and fiber and maintain biodiversity. Agriculture is a powerful nature-based carbon sink, which could begin to degrade if action is not taken to increase climate resilience, support adaptation, sequester carbon, and enhance productivity. And USDA has many proven climate practices that meet these goals. So as far as innovative climate solutions, it's important that these tools and practices are region-specific and can adapt to the on-the-ground reality of our producers. These actions should have co-benefits for climate mitigation, conservation, and sustainability. So our approach is that successful sustainable solutions are place-based, flexible, and locally led. This includes reduced and no-till farming and use of cover crops to improve soil health, ruminant feed management, manure management, and fertilizer management to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and include methane and nitrous oxide, and improved irrigation, reduced fuel use, and energy conservation to improve on-farm energy efficiency. So though many of these practices are not new, that doesn't make them any less effective or necessary. If anything, they're needed even more now given the current impacts of climate change. And by pairing these tried and true conservation practices with cutting-edge tools and technologies, we can really see improvements in soil health, nutrient use efficiency, and sustainable productivity growth. There's so many exciting potential game changers on the horizon, such as research on new perennial grain crops that can enhance and improve agrobiodiversity, soil structure, and nutrient and water retention. When climate-smart practices are implemented together to maximize continuous living roots, biodiversity, and soil cover while minimizing disturbance, it helps create a soil health management system that is more resilient to increases in extreme and variable weather. So innovative partnerships and initiatives are vital to address these challenges, and equity and justice also play a guiding role in our work, recognizing we need to reach all producers and landowners so that they reap the benefits of these climate innovations. Though locally led conservation activities and climate solutions are the core of what we do at USDA, we're also committed to working with all partners on regional, national, and global scales. So we value multi-sectoral dialogues like this one to advance shared goals through research collaboration, knowledge sharing, and policy dialogue. The Cash Alliance is a great example of an international partnership focused on these common goals, and the U.S. is proud to have become an official member this past year. Another example is the Vision for Adapted Crops and Soil Initiative that has brought together multilateral and multi-level stakeholders to invest in the cultivation of new and improved crops, along with improved soil management and soil health to address food and nutrition security worldwide. So by creating an open, collaborative process for innovative and new approaches, governments create space for private sector efforts. By breaking down barriers to innovation and promoting the adoption of internationally recognized science-based regulatory frameworks, we can mobilize greater investment in advancing our climate and sustainability goals. Another way governments can incentivize adoption of climate-smart practices is through programs aimed at mobilizing diverse private sector expertise. And USDA is doing this through our Partnerships for Climate-Smart Commodities program, which USDA Secretary Vilsack announced in 2022. And this program involves partner-led pilot and demonstration projects aimed at scaling up climate-smart agriculture and forestry practices nationally and increasing our understanding of how to efficiently monitor, measure, and track the greenhouse gas benefits of these practices over time and at scale. So the program is built on the recognition that we can make great strides in improving agricultural sustainability by involving producers across every sector and building on their expertise. The landmark Inflation Reduction Act provides USDA with nearly $40 billion to invest over the next 10 years to strengthen American agriculture in the face of climate change, all while achieving significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Through this investment, over the past year, USDA has provided several opportunities to support producers and communities in addressing climate change impacts, including, for example, the EQIP Water Smart Initiative in collaboration with the Bureau of Reclamation to help farmers and ranchers conserve water and build drought resilience in their communities. So all these actions together position agriculture to contribute significantly to climate mitigation, strengthen resilience and adaptation, while continuing to produce the food, feed, and fiber needed in the U.S. and around the world, and ensuring that we conserve our soil, air, and water for generations to come. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tayo. That was brilliant. And you see, now don't worry, John, she took us back to hope. So, yeah, no one remembers any of your negative comments. So, even though it's only 45-minute session, we have made sure there's time for Q&A. So I'm going to approach you slowly to give you time to think. And if I know you, I may call you out, like if your name starts with an N and ends with an N, to ask something. So who wants to go first? Who wants to ask the first question? Otherwise, it's Nitin, who actually is a financial expertise. Any questions? Nitin, you'll ask a question, I know. Oh, good.
I love those quiz with N, because my name starts with N. So I'm Nazia from University of Cambridge, and we actually have an interesting project on blended finance for regenerative agriculture. My question is actually for the 1 Acre Fund to shed more light on how easy it is for the market to do the blended finance mechanism, knowing that the balance sheet is actually in the negative for a while. So, truth to be told, how much rubber hits the road when it comes to fundraising?
Very good question. I'd like to take a couple more. Who else? Oh, really? Okay, Nitin. Oh, good. Peter will. Great.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Peter Gilruth from C4 ECRAF, and I have a question for John Mundi. I had the pleasure of meeting Eric Pullman and seeing some of the work that was going on in Kigali and Rwanda. He mentioned that one of the biggest frustrations that he has is in seed quality. I'd like you to comment on that from a more global perspective, if you will. Seed quality and seed sourcing, seed genetics. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nitin Suk, and I'm the investment director of Resilient Landscapes, which is a nature-based solutions incubator of C4 ECRAF. This is a question for John, because not for John. All right, but I am pointing at John. No, he raised an issue of cost of capital in the global south. It remains a very persistent issue. What kind of tools or facilities have you come across that can be easily tapped into to bring the cost of capital down for local financial institutions in the global south?
Great. So that's 3 questions. So I'd like each panelist to tackle. So there's issues of scale, and I think that also relates to green fertilizers. It also relates to some of the, what did you say, breaking down barriers, Tayo? Be careful, because I really listened to what you were saying. So I think each one of you can have about 1.5 minutes each to address any points of these questions. So we'll start with Daniel and then go to John last.
Well, I think the least questions came to me because it was just everything I said was just crystal clear right now. I think the maybe the cost of capital question. I mean, absolutely, this is a big issue, and I mentioned that there are many different ways of getting climate finance. Some of them through concessionary capital, more like grants that can be provided to basically cover that risk difference. You can also do blended finance, which is a little bit more likely to get cost recovery from that, and then there's just I think there's a lot of different examples of ways that we're hearing about here at COP of climate finance that can be accessed through engagements with the private sector, public-private partnerships. So I don't have a good sense of all the different mechanisms, but the difference in risk really is not a huge difference in cost of capital. It's enough so that it should be something that when you take into account the benefits, so when you take into account the economic development benefits, when you take into account the fact that foreign reserves will be saved and all that, I think it becomes worth it from a development perspective. So I think there's lots of opportunities to leverage development finance, and we just need to do a little bit more work on estimating what those benefits are, so that we can be able to really make the case for to cover that risk. Yeah.
Great, and thanks, Daniel, for also bringing in risk. I mean, investing in healthy soil is probably like the least riskiest thing that you can do, right? So thanks for bringing that in. So Tayo, over to you. You can tackle anything.
Is this okay? This is okay. Great. Sorry. Yeah, no, thank you. I guess I'll just speak to the scale question and how governments can partner with organizations, with producers to bring some of these innovations to scale. So, I mean, I think that's the kicker, just partnering with the government. I mean, we're lucky under this administration that we have a lot of investment in climate smart agriculture, $40 billion through the Inflation Reduction Act, and then $3 billion through the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities. But the important part is partnering with the producers and disseminating a lot of the knowledge that we're getting from some of these climate actions. So, for example, I'll just touch on USDA's climate hubs. So we have regional climate hubs throughout the United States that works regionally with farmers to tackle some of these climate actions and innovations on a regional level, and disseminate them to other people in the region. So just that the knowledge sharing and partnership in that way. I would say also beyond regionally, we also have our International Climate Hub as well. So that is another initiative that was started about a year ago, where we're not only using our knowledge or gaining the knowledge that we're using the knowledge that we're gaining domestically, but also disseminating it internationally so that other countries can benefit, so that we're sharing science-based solutions all over the world. So I would, hopefully that answers that. But that's from the perspective I'm coming from. I think partnerships with government is a good way to scale up some of these innovations.
Yes. And thanks for bringing that up, because right now, as I said, over 1/3 of the Earth's surface being degraded, scaling, we have no option. We have to scale, and we really cannot really even invest in demo plots anymore. It has to be all on farm, all, really practical. And thank you so much for talking about capacity development, dissemination, because we didn't really touch on that a lot here, but it's absolutely critical. And you mentioned science and then in your opening remarks was research. So as a scientist, I'm really pleased to hear you say that and how we can leverage that information to really have impact on the ground. Now, I'm really sorry there were no questions for you. Please go ahead, John.
Okay, 1.5 minutes to speak truth to a guy who knows my CEO. Great, thanks, Lee. Okay, so starting with the Regen Ag Finance question from the University of Cambridge. Regenerative agriculture is a lot more expensive in at least the first 3 to 5 years. We are running trials. We have costed it. Our core package of support, if you include insurance and extension services, in the traditional model of agriculture costs about $92 per farmer per hectare per year. The package of support, if you're going to do cover crops, crop rotation, more intensive agroforestry, better insurance, high-touch, gender-sensitive extension services, which means you're going to the farm more often, because that's often what women's smallholder needs are, and you're able to do optimized agronomy based on their soil type, and you're able to deliver a supply chain that is sensitive to different inputs in very different localized contexts. That's what Regen Ag needs. That's about $300 plus per farmer per hectare per year. The carbon market alone won't pay for that. So my message to the world here is it is a high ROI investment if you take a holistic economic security, food security, national political security, nutrition perspective, and a migration perspective. It's not necessarily going to be a great business proposition if you're going to invest in it right now, because there is no vehicle for regenerative ag finance in the global south. Now, it could be a results-based finance mechanism. Let's talk about that. But at the moment, we don't have many of those conversations about the mechanisms to finance. Last thing quickly about regen financing, there is a yield gap in our trials in certain contexts. Semi-arid areas, great. It works from year 1 or 2, fantastic. With highland soils, clay-based soils, the majority of sub-Saharan African farmers are in some of those soils. It actually is a yield gap, 20% losses. We actually pay farmers the difference that they would have received if they had a full yield in conventional practices for the first 3 years. That's expensive too. On seedlings, native seed, we distribute 100 million trees per year through farmer-owned decentralized tree nurseries, about 17 different species. We would love to increase the number of native species and fruit trees. The quality, but also the cost, is a major problem for us in every country. And that's partly government capacity to be able to produce the base content of seedlings correctly. And then it's partly the supply chain of agroforestry systems. I think ICRAF is best placed. Some of these issues, it's not One Acre Fund's job. I definitely think you're best in class, and we rely on you. And I don't need to explain the science to Lee sitting next to me, because that's a bit intimidating. Just quickly on the cost of capital, I need to call out DFC. They are one of our lenders. We're very pleased to have them on board. They also support us with technical assistance on climate finance with the concessional loan. Now, if more global South actors could have access to that, fantastic. I think the big problem at the moment is, look, I'm going to take my One Acre Fund hat off and just say One Acre Fund is able to fundraise in that way. Most people based in domestic context with only one country of operation or one district will never be able to access some of those resources, and they cannot afford 18 to 25% interest rates. It's just, there's no point in pretending that that's going to work in staple crop agri systems. So we have to have concessionary capital. How that works with the finance agenda, it's kind of hard to close that loop, I understand. But concessional lenders are essential for our model. We could not have scaled without concessional, bilateral, and international multilateral finance.
Great. I think you did a good job answering all of those questions. So I just want to do a check-in. So for those of you who this is your first soil event at the COP, are you sort of convinced now that healthy soil is important? Can I see a raise of hands? All right. This is great. I'm glad to see that. And if you didn't yet, don't worry, because we have closing remarks from one of the most energetic and smart people I know, Ann Vaughn. She's the Deputy Assistant Administrator at USAID's Bureau for Resilience, Environment, and Food Security. See, you set her up well, Ty, was saying resilience earlier. So please, Ann, we look forward to your insightful remarks. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Lee. And if I'm enthusiastic, it is such a pleasure. I had linear remarks. And I was going to try to wrap this all up, but I think the richness of the questions and the richness of the panel makes that really challenging. So I'm going to beg your forgiveness for being a little scattered to try to cover the importance of soil. And we're also talking about fertilizer. So I kind of want to, Lee's PowerPoints at the beginning talking about soil. We've all raised our hands. We know how important soil is. We got to get it right. But we're also talking about fertilizer. And I think it's one of the most pressing and central challenges that we're facing right now, because we know we need to reduce emissions. We know we need to improve soil health globally, because degraded lands are not filling bellies as much as they need to be. And that leads to this other challenge of how we have to safeguard our food security and our water quality. And we really need to get all back to finance. How do we reduce farmers' costs to sustainably increase and productively grow more, and hopefully on that same plot of land, and not cut down more trees to plant more food? We call it sustainable intensification. There's all sorts of things that you can call it, but basically, how do we get land, often degraded soils, to be as productive as possible to feed a growing population? And I work on food security, guys. I got to bring it back to the fact that over 700 million people are hungry around the world. It's only getting harder with climate change. It's only getting harder when we're not taking care of our soils, and we're not doing the right type of interventions and helping empower farmers to be able to have the finances and the choices and those inputs to be able to grow enough for their family and their communities. So, some of the things we're doing about that, again, apologies for not being completely linear, but there's policy things that we need to talk about, and then I want to share sort of an innovative effort that we're doing that gets to using fertilizer right. Because if it's green, if it's regular, if it's organic, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we are not using the right amount of fertilizer. So it is not actually helping farmers produce as much as they need to be able to grow and feed their families. There's been a huge effort with the African Union. There was a fertilizer and soil health summit. So, this is like Lee's dream, right? But back in May, the African Union and Kenya hosted it, and governments came together, and donors, there's 14 donors that came together to say, we are going to support an African-led effort to try to get soils and fertilizer. We've got to get this right, because it is this big of a problem that we are not able to feed our own populations because of the situation we have, both because of Russia's unjust invasion of Ukraine that spiked the price of fertilizer and really just wreaked havoc on our markets, took a quarter of the world's calorie off the world stage for a while. So you need that flexibility in the supply chains, but we also needed to figure out, what do we do when fertilizer prices are so high? So we spent a lot at USAID and Feed the Future, and with our State Department, USDA friends and colleagues, have worked really hard to support, again, these African-led efforts that came out of this fertilizer summit that talks about the right way to try to, every country in Africa now has a soil and a fertilizer plan. How do we use fertilizer better? And the policies around it, because you need good enabling environments, both for fertilizer, but also just for farmers writ large. Lowering the price of capital, holy moly. If we don't get that right, farmers cannot buy these inputs. And there's a lot of subsidies programs for fertilizer that are not necessarily helping smallholder farmers. So this is an opportunity for us to all look at what is actually going to be helpful and impactful for smallholder farmers. So there's a lot of good work that came out of that fertilizer summit. USAID is trying to support governments throughout Africa and trying to implement these plans that are hopefully being pulled together now. So that's the policy and enabling environment side. We've got to get the soil right. We've got to get the fertilizer right. And then there's also a lot of, I'm going to leave with some hope. I'm going to be hopeful. We can take technology and bringing all these great shiny objects in technology, including satellites from space, with the brilliance of smallholder farmers on the ground who know their conditions better than anybody else. We've helped develop something called Space to Place. Space refers to the satellite technology that can actually map down and say, here is what the soil needs, here's how much water is in this specific area, and then tie that in with local knowledge and bring together, and so you can have the right application of fertilizer. Because right now you can lose, if you don't put the right fertilizer in the match with the right type of soil type, it's kind of a waste of money, as we were saying. I forgot if it was Josh, someone was saying, you can lose so much of that very expensive input that is not ending up contributing to feeding your family and your community. So this effort called Space to Place that USAID and partners and IFDC and others, it helps decrease fertilizer wastage by up to 80% while you're increasing your yields and your productivity by 25 to 35%. So I think that's a pretty hopeful example of it can be green, it can be whatever type of fertilizer we have, but getting it right for those local conditions. So it's very much like a COP thing. We're talking very globally all over the last 2 weeks over what's needed, but then taking that good knowledge and then making sure it's fit to purpose on the ground can really have a 25 to 35% increase in productivity can be a huge difference for farmers who are living right on the edge and moving from subsistence to actually being able to sell more and be able to send your kids to school. So I think there is hope. Lots of interesting innovations on how do we reduce emissions, make it cheaper, work with government, partner better, make sure we're getting insurance for smallholder farmers, and making everything more accessible so the smallholders that are helping feed the world are able to do so in a comprehensive and sustainable way. So I think I made it right on time. So a huge thanks to you guys for a really fascinating panel and great questions. Thanks.
She did not let us down. The most energetic and smartest person. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're right on time. And please interact with our whole panel for your burning questions you didn't want to ask in public. Thank you so much.
This is the last event of the day. We'll be back again tomorrow with a lot of great events. We have dealing with disaster, how to U.S. government is working with businesses to build resilience. We have housing as an equitable climate strategy with our housing and urban development folks. We have decarbonizing transportation with DOT, our transportation folks, and climate resilient infrastructure. We have net zero world with DOE. And we have unlocking green steel and green cements. Come back tomorrow.
This was the last event of the day at the U.S. Center. We know parting is such sweet sorrow. But don't worry, we'll be back again tomorrow.